First, joining us is Dr. Ken Hutcherson. Dr. Hutcherson is a former American football linebacker in the NFL for the Dallas Cowboys, who is now a pastor of Antioch Baptist Church in the great state of Washington. Doctor.
Thanks so much, Star. It is a privilege to be here today. And I'm going to tell you how important it is to me to be here. I've had cancer for 12 years. I've had bone cancer for 4.5 years. Now, if anyone has ever dealt with anyone with bone cancer, know anything about cancer, that is a very difficult time, and the pain oftentimes is unbearable. But I came from Seattle to be here because this issue is a lot more important than my health. It is a lot more important than my church. It's a lot more important than just myself. Now, I think it's important that I was shocked last night that I may have to change my mind about something. And that was when I heard that several African-American Pro Bowl NFL greats came out and said that we should really work on changing the Second Amendment. They are supporting the president's ways of going after the Second Amendment. So what I have to change my mind is that I think it's probably true there was brain damage in the NFL. I'm going to tell you how important the Constitution is, and that we should be very careful about changing anything, especially the Second Amendment. All of you in here understand the importance of light. Light gives us ways that we can step correctly. The Constitution to the United States is the light that allows us to walk consistently and constantly. Now, you may not appreciate that example unless you understand the importance of light. Do you understand that the first thing God created in Genesis chapter 1, verse 3 was light? Light. And God spoke to it directly, and light obeyed at 186,000 miles per second. Now, if God created it in Genesis 1:3, and light started at 183,000 miles per second, to this very day, and I believe in a young earth. Now, you can say whatever you want. You can believe in the millions of years. I believe in a God who can create immediately. Amen. And I think the earth is a young earth, 7,000 to 8,000 years at the most. Now, Genesis 1:3 tells me light started traveling in Genesis 1:3 over 7,000 years ago. And it's still traveling at 186,000 miles to be obedient to God. And as pastors, as leaders, we need to be obedient to God. And God says, protect that which he has given the United States through men who believed in his word. Now, that's not impressive. What's impressive is what light reveals. If we turn this light off, one thing is for sure, all of us up here would disappear. Because you cannot see, you cannot walk directly, you cannot walk straight, you cannot walk in the circumstance of what is true. Light travels at 186,000 miles per second. If you multiply it times 60, light travels 11,160,000 miles in 1 minute. Multiply that times 60, light travels in 1 hour, 669,600,000 miles, and it's been doing it ever since Genesis 1:3 for obedience. Why, if we are not wanting light to change, to put light on this situation, why would we ever think about changing the Constitution? Why would he ever think about touching the Second Amendment? Because it is proven true. It has proven the way for America, for African Americans especially, to protect themselves and to stand. Light traveling at 669,600,000 miles an hour. If you want to do it in a day, would you like to do it in a day? You multiply 669 million times 24. Light travels in 1 hour. Hold on. 16 billion, 70 million, 400,000 miles in 1 hour. Doing it since Genesis 1:3. Has not slowed down, has not found any excuse. I have never heard light say, well, I better not travel this fast because people are not going to understand it. Times change. And they're going to think I'm dealing with me and I'm bragging about myself. I never heard light say that. And as pastors and as Christians, as African Americans, we're not going to change our thoughts on what is right and what is needed to be done. Amen. Well, now see, now that's 16 billion, 70 million, 400,000, I said, in a day. It's easy to get how far light travels in a year. Would you like that? You multiply 16 billion, 70 million, 400,000 times 365. Now, you got to put your mind together to multiply that number. Okay. Light travels in 1 year. 5 trillion, 865 billion, 696 million miles. And I know it's a lot of you whites out there saying, hey, there ain't nowhere in the world a black man can figure that out, and we're going to check his numbers when we get out of here. Guaranteed that it does. It is so important for all of us to understand that light has been traveling 5 trillion, 865 billion, 696 million miles since Genesis 1:3, being obedient to God. We haven't been here any amount of time as long as light has. But we do know what light reveals. And this is what I have questions for all you that is listening. How long? How many children has to die before we come to the conclusion that the issue about the Second Amendment is not about protecting kids, it's about changing the Constitution? How many children got to die before we admit that? How many children has to die before we come to common sense? Which we have lost much in America today. It's not much common sense left. But how many of us are going to allow children to continue to die, to put signs in front of our schools to invite people to come in and kill them? What are you talking about, Pastor? Let me tell you what I'm talking about. How many of you would put in front of your house a sign that says gun-free zone? How many of you would put in front of your house, I have diamonds, I have gold, I have silver, I have precious metals, I have some great expensive artifacts, and I am not home. My dogs that are guard dogs are locked up, and I won't be home until 3:30 tomorrow afternoon. Would you put that sign in front of your house? But yet and still we want to put gun-free zones in front of our schools. How many black children has to die before you even care? Why isn't all the children that have been destroyed in all of our cities, black on black crime, don't get any front page news? But you get a Sandy Hook. And what happens? Everybody's in an uproar. We've had 10 times more African-American children killed with guns. Because you know what? How many children have to die, black and white, for us to come to the conclusion that most of the gun violence is in cities with the most gun control? When are we going to change our minds and put some common sense in there? When are we going to come to the conclusion that privacy may not be as important as a life? We need to know how many children is going to die before we change the HIPAA laws. How many children have to die before we get these lunatics, half of them, and people with mental issues off the streets? But because of their privacy, we can't do anything about it. And oftentimes families struggle to get them institutionalized. So how many children, and last of all, how many children has to die, my friends, before we come to the realization that a bad man with a gun can only be stopped by a good man with a gun?